Stop being so dramatic about it, Sophie, my father Richard said with a satisfied grin, leaning back in his favorite recliner. Your ring gave Natasha the trip she always wanted. You should be grateful we could help your sister instead of letting that expensive jewelry sit around collecting dust while you recovered. I sat there on the couch in our family home in Atlanta, Georgia, still weak from my 3-week hospital stay, staring at my father in complete disbelief. The bandages from my surgery were barely removed, and I was discovering that my family had sold my $25,000 wedding ring to fund my sister Natasha's vacation to Thailand with her new boyfriend. My name is Sophie Carter, and I am 37 years old. I work as a marketing director for Sterling Research Labs, a pharmaceutical research company. 3 weeks ago, I had undergone major surgery to remove a benign tumor from my abdomen. The recovery required an extended hospital stay followed by weeks of rest at home. During this vulnerable time, I had moved back into my childhood home so my family could help care for me while I healed. What I never expected was that they would see my medical crisis as an opportunity to steal from me. You sold my wedding ring? I asked quietly, my voice barely above a whisper. The ring had been my late husband's final gift to me before he passed away from cancer 2 years ago. It was not just expensive jewelry. It was the last tangible connection I had to the love of my life. Natasha bounced into the living room at that moment, her skin glowing with a fresh tan and her eyes sparkling with excitement. She was 29 years old, 8 years younger than me, and had always been my father's favorite child. Everything had always come easily to her, and when it didn't, our father made sure to smooth the way. Sophie, you are finally awake, Natasha exclaimed, rushing over to hug me. I just got back from the most amazing 3 weeks in Thailand. The beaches were incredible, and the food was to die for. You would not believe the elephant sanctuary we visited. I felt a chill run down my spine as the pieces began falling into place. 3 weeks, I repeated slowly. Dad surprised me with the most generous gift. He said you wanted me to have an amazing vacation since I had been working so hard at the real estate agency. Natasha's smile was radiant, completely oblivious to the darkness of what had actually transpired. My father's eyes met mine with a challenging stare. Natasha deserved that trip, Sophie. She has been struggling financially, and you have always had everything handed to you. It was time for you to contribute to this family for once. The cruelty of his words hit me like a physical blow, but something inside me remained eerily calm. I smiled sweetly at both of them, feeling a strange sense of satisfaction wash over me. There was something they did not know about that ring. Growing up in the Carter household had taught me early that Natasha could do no wrong in our father's eyes. My mother had passed away when I was 15, leaving Richard to raise 2 daughters alone. Instead of treating us equally, he'd clearly chosen his favorite child and made no effort to hide his preference. Throughout high school and college, Natasha received new cars, expensive clothes, and trips to Europe, while I worked part-time jobs to pay for my own expenses. When I graduated with honors from Georgia Tech and landed my first job in pharmaceutical marketing, Richard barely acknowledged my achievement. When Natasha dropped out of college after 2 years to pursue various failed business ventures, he called her entrepreneurial and continued funding her lifestyle. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I married my husband Michael 5 years ago, Richard complained about the cost of the wedding and suggested we should have eloped. When Natasha announced her engagement to a man she had known for 3 months, Richard immediately offered to pay for an elaborate celebration. That engagement fell apart within 6 months, but Richard never mentioned the wasted money. Michael had been my refuge from the family dysfunction. He was a gentle, brilliant man who worked as a biochemist at the same company where I built my career. We supported each other's dreams and created a peaceful life together, far from the chaos of my childhood home. When Michael was diagnosed with aggressive lung cancer at 32, our world shattered. The 18 months of his treatment were the most challenging period of my life. I took family leave to care for him, spending our savings on experimental treatments and specialists. Richard never offered to help financially, claiming he was still supporting Natasha and could not afford to assist us. During Michael's final weeks, when I was exhausted and heartbroken, Richard actually suggested that I should move back home after Michael's death because Natasha could use the company. Michael's final gift to me was the stunning diamond wedding ring he had saved for months to afford. He presented it to me on our 4th anniversary, just 2 months before his diagnosis. "I want you to have something beautiful that reminds you how much you are loved," he had whispered, sliding the platinum band with its flawless 3-carat center diamond onto my finger. After Michael's funeral, Richard made several comments about how impractical it was for me to keep wearing such an expensive ring. He suggested I should sell it and invest the money more wisely. Natasha had also mentioned multiple times how gorgeous the ring was and how she wished she could afford something similar for herself. Their interest in my ring had not gone unnoticed. During the past year, I had caught Natasha photographing it when she thought I was not looking. Richard had asked pointed questions about its value and whether I had it appraised for insurance purposes. The attention made me increasingly uncomfortable, especially as Natasha's financial situation became more desperate due to her poor career choices and expensive lifestyle. 3 months before my surgery, I had made a decision that now seemed remarkably prescient. The tumor diagnosis had come as a complete shock during a routine physical examination. My doctor discovered an abnormal mass during my annual checkup and immediately ordered additional tests. Within 2 weeks, I learned that I needed major abdominal surgery to remove what appeared to be a large, benign growth that was causing internal complications. The surgery would require a significant recovery period, and my doctor strongly recommended having family support during the healing process. Against my better judgment, I had agreed to stay with Richard and Natasha while I recovered. I knew their history of putting their own needs first, but I also knew I would need help with basic tasks during the initial weeks after surgery. As I prepared for the medical procedure, a nagging worry kept surfacing in my mind. Richard and Natasha had been increasingly interested in my financial situation since Michael's death. They knew I had life insurance money, savings from my pharmaceutical career, and valuable possessions, including my wedding ring. The thought of being unconscious and helpless while they had access to my belongings made me deeply uncomfortable. 2 months before the surgery, I had taken a precautionary step that would prove to be life-saving. I visited a jewelry store in downtown Atlanta and found a cubic zirconia replica that was virtually identical to my real wedding ring. The fake cost $300 and was crafted so expertly that even experienced jewelry professionals would need specialized equipment to detect the difference immediately. I placed my authentic wedding ring in a safety deposit box at Capital City Bank under my maiden name, Sophie Williams. Only I knew about this account, and I paid for the box rental with cash to avoid any paper trail that Richard or Natasha might discover. The bank records showed the box was rented to Sophie Williams with identification showing my pre-marriage address. For 2 months before my surgery, I wore the replica ring daily. Richard and Natasha never noticed the switch because the fake was so convincing. I practiced removing it naturally when I washed dishes or applied lotion, just as I had done with the original ring. The cubic zirconia caught light beautifully and felt substantial on my finger. On the day I entered the hospital for surgery, I deliberately left the fake ring on my bedside table at Richard's house. I told him I was too nervous to wear it during the procedure and asked him to keep it safe while I was in the hospital. He had agreed readily, and I noticed the way his eyes lingered on the ring as I placed it in my jewelry box. During my 3-week hospital stay, I had plenty of time to think about my family's character and what they might do with access to my possessions. Nurses frequently commented on how few visitors I received, especially compared to other patients who had family members checking on them daily. Richard and Natasha visited me exactly twice during the entire 3-week period, both times asking when I would be released and whether I needed anything from home. Now sitting in the living room, hearing about Natasha's exotic vacation, I realized my precautions had been not only wise but absolutely necessary. "I am so happy Natasha had a wonderful time," I said sweetly, maintaining my calm demeanor despite the rage building inside me. "Thailand sounds absolutely magical. I would love to hear all about the elephant sanctuary and those beautiful beaches you mentioned." Natasha launched into an enthusiastic description of her vacation while Richard nodded approvingly from his chair. She showed me hundreds of photos on her phone, luxurious resort rooms overlooking pristine beaches, elaborate spa treatments, romantic dinners with her boyfriend Jeremy, and adventure excursions through tropical forests. The level of extravagance was staggering, clearly far beyond what Natasha could have afforded on her real estate agent's salary. "The resort cost $1,200 per night," Natasha gushed, "and Jeremy surprised me with a helicopter tour of the islands that was another $800. We also went scuba diving with a private instructor and took a cooking class with a world-famous chef. It was like living in a dream." I calculated quickly in my head. 3 weeks at $1,200 per night was over $25,000 just for accommodation. Adding flights, meals, activities, and shopping, Natasha's vacation had easily cost $35,000 or more. "How wonderful that you could afford such a luxurious trip," I said carefully, watching Richard's expression. "Well, I could not have done it without Dad's generosity, Natasha replied, squeezing Richard's hand. He said the ring money was enough to cover everything, and Jeremy contributed some savings too. It was perfect timing because I had been feeling so stressed about work and really needed a break. Richard's chest puffed with pride. Natasha works very hard in real estate, and she deserved to have something special. Your ring was just sitting in a jewelry box doing nothing, Sophie. At least now it provided Natasha with memories that will last a lifetime. The casual way he dismissed my most precious possession as worthless decoration made my stomach turn. This was not just theft. It was a calculated betrayal during my most vulnerable moment. They had waited until I was unconscious and helpless before stealing from me. Where exactly did you sell the ring? I asked with genuine curiosity. Peterson Fine Jewelry on Peachtree Street, Richard replied proudly. The owner, Mr. Peterson, gave us $18,000 cash for it. He said it was a beautiful piece and would sell quickly to the right customer. I nodded thoughtfully. Peterson Fine Jewelry was a reputable establishment that had been in Atlanta for over 40 years. Mr. Peterson was known for his expertise in appraising valuable gemstones and had built his reputation on honest dealings with customers. $18,000 sounds like a fair price, I said carefully. I hope Mr. Peterson was able to find the right buyer for such a special piece. He said he already had a customer interested in that style of ring, Natasha added. Someone who was looking for an engagement ring in that exact size and setting. It worked out perfectly for everyone. I felt a cold satisfaction wash over me as I imagined what would happen when Peterson's customer took the ring for professional appraisal, as most people do with expensive jewelry purchases. The thought of Mr. Peterson discovering he had unknowingly sold cubic zirconia as genuine diamonds made my smile grow wider. I am just grateful Natasha had such an amazing experience, I said softly, and I'm sure everything will work out exactly as it should. Richard studied my face suspiciously. You are taking this remarkably well, Sophie. I expected you to be more upset about the ring. What is done is done, I replied with a shrug. Besides, families should support each other during difficult times. If my ring could give Natasha such happiness, then perhaps Michael would have wanted it that way. The mention of my late husband seemed to ease Richard's concerns. He had always felt slightly guilty about his lack of support during Michael's illness, and invoking Michael's memory was an effective way to shut down further questions. I excused myself to rest, claiming I was still tired from the surgery recovery. As I walked to my old bedroom, I could hear Natasha continuing to describe her vacation adventures to Richard. Their voices were filled with satisfaction and joy, completely oblivious to the reckoning that was coming their way. Over the next few days, I played the role of the grateful, recovering family member while carefully documenting everything about their theft. I took photos of Natasha's vacation pictures displayed proudly around the house, recorded conversations where Richard boasted about solving Natasha's financial problems with my ring money, and made detailed notes about their spending timeline. Natasha had returned from Thailand exactly 3 weeks after my surgery, which meant they had sold my ring almost immediately after I entered the hospital. The calculated nature of their timing was particularly cruel. They had not even waited to see if I would survive the surgery before stealing from me. I was so worried about you during the operation, Natasha said over breakfast one morning, completely contradicting her actions. But Dad said you would want us to make good use of the ring money while you were recovering. He thought it would cheer you up to know I was having a wonderful time. Richard nodded solemnly. I knew you would want Natasha to benefit from your ring rather than having it locked away unused. You have always been such a generous sister. Their ability to rewrite history and present themselves as thoughtful family members was breathtaking. They had genuinely convinced themselves that stealing from me during surgery was somehow an act of love and consideration. I called my office to check on work projects, using the conversation to casually mention my timeline for returning to Atlanta. My colleagues at Sterling Research Labs expressed concern about my recovery and suggested I take additional time off if needed. I assured them I was healing well and would be back to full capacity soon. That afternoon, I drove to Capital City Bank to check on my safety deposit box. The real wedding ring sparkled brilliantly under the bank's fluorescent lights, its 3-carat center diamond catching every ray of light with stunning brilliance. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with smaller diamonds surrounding the center stone in a platinum setting that Michael had chosen specifically to complement my hand. I held the ring for several minutes, remembering the day Michael had surprised me with it. He had planned an elaborate presentation during our anniversary dinner, getting down on one knee in the restaurant to present it as a symbol of his eternal love. The memory brought tears to my eyes, but also strengthened my resolve to protect Michael's legacy from my family's greed. The contrast between my genuine ring and the cubic zirconia replica was subtle but significant. While the fake looked convincing to casual observers, the real diamonds had a depth and fire that no artificial stone could replicate. A professional jeweler with proper equipment would identify the fake immediately upon close examination. I returned the real ring to its secure box and drove back to Richard's house, where Natasha was showing neighbors more photos from her Thailand vacation. She had invited several friends over for an impromptu gathering, eager to share stories about her exotic adventure. Sophie's ring made it all possible, Natasha announced loudly to the assembled group. Dad surprised me with the most generous gift by selling it while she was in the hospital. He said she would want me to have amazing experiences, rather than letting expensive jewelry sit unused. The neighbors looked uncomfortable with Natasha's casual admission that she had funded her vacation with her sister's wedding ring, especially while I was recovering from surgery. Several people glanced at me sympathetically, clearly recognizing the inappropriate nature of the situation. "How thoughtful of your father," one neighbor said carefully, "to make such decisions during Sophie's medical crisis." The subtle criticism in her tone went completely over Natasha's head, but I caught the disapproving looks exchanged between several guests. Word would spread through the neighborhood about Richard and Natasha's behavior, adding another layer to the consequences they would soon face. I smiled graciously and thanked everyone for their concern about my recovery, playing the role of the forgiving sister while internally counting down the days until their deception would be exposed. 1 week after learning about the theft, I was preparing dinner when the doorbell rang insistently. Richard was at his weekly poker game and Natasha was at work showing properties to clients. I was alone in the house, still technically recovering, but feeling much stronger each day. Through the front window, I could see a man in an expensive suit standing on the porch, holding a small jewelry box and looking extremely agitated. My heart rate increased as I realized this might be the moment I had been anticipating. I opened the door to find a distinguished gentleman in his 60s with silver hair and a deeply troubled expression. "Good evening. I am looking for Richard Carter. I am Harold Peterson from Peterson Fine Jewelry." "Hello, Mr. Peterson. I am Sophie, Richard's daughter. He's not home right now, but I can take a message for him." I kept my voice neutral despite my excitement. Mr. Peterson's face was grim. "Miss Carter, I need to speak with your father immediately about a very serious matter. 3 weeks ago, he sold me a diamond ring that he claimed belonged to you. I have discovered that the ring is completely fraudulent." I gasped in apparent shock. "Fraudulent? What do you mean?" "The stones are cubic zirconia, not diamonds," Mr. Peterson explained, his voice tight with anger. "I sold the ring to a customer yesterday for $22,000. When she took it for insurance appraisal this morning, the gemologist immediately identified it as worthless costume jewelry. My customer is threatening legal action, and my reputation is on the line." I invited Mr. Peterson inside, expressing appropriate concern and confusion. "I cannot understand how this could have happened. That ring was my late husband's gift to me, and he assured me it was genuine. Miss Carter, either your husband was deceived when he purchased this ring, or someone in your family knowingly sold me fake jewelry," Mr. Peterson said firmly. "I need immediate restitution of the $18,000 I paid, plus damages for the humiliation I have suffered with my customer." At that moment, Natasha burst through the front door, having returned early from work. She froze when she saw Mr. Peterson, her face paling as she recognized him. "Mr. Peterson, what brings you here?" Natasha asked with forced cheerfulness. "Miss Carter." Mr. Peterson turned to face Natasha. "I am here because your father sold me fraudulent jewelry 3 weeks ago. The ring you claimed was worth $25,000 contains nothing but worthless cubic zirconia." Natasha's mouth dropped open in genuine shock. "That is impossible. Sophie's ring was definitely real. She wore it every day for years. I have the gemologist's report right here," Mr. Peterson said, pulling out official documents. "Every stone in that ring is artificial. Your father committed fraud, and I demand immediate payment of $18,000 plus additional compensation for my damaged reputation." I watched Natasha's face as the reality sank in. Her vacation, her exotic adventures, her bragging to neighbors and friends, all of it had been funded by worthless fake jewelry. The humiliation was visible as her confident expression crumbled into confusion and fear. "But Sophie wore that ring constantly," Natasha protested weakly. "How could it be fake?" Mr. Peterson's expression was unforgiving. "That is between your family and the police, Miss Carter. I will be filing criminal fraud charges tomorrow morning unless I receive full restitution tonight. Your father assured me the ring was authentic and valuable. He committed a serious crime. Just then, Richard's car pulled into the driveway. Through the window, I could see him packing and gathering his things from the poker game. He looked relaxed and satisfied, completely unaware that his world was about to collapse. Natasha and I stood frozen in the living room, while Mr. Peterson waited by the door, still holding the jewelry box containing the worthless ring that had destroyed their credibility and financial security. Richard walked through the front door, whistling cheerfully, clearly having had a successful evening at poker. His smile vanished immediately when he saw Mr. Peterson standing in the living room with Natasha and me, all wearing serious expressions. "Mr. Carter," Peterson said without preamble, "I am here about the ring you sold me 3 weeks ago. It is completely fraudulent." Richard's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, denial, and then growing panic as the implications became clear. "What are you talking about? Sophie's ring was genuine. She wore it for years." "Every stone in this ring is cubic zirconia," Mr. Peterson stated, opening the jewelry box to reveal the fake ring. "My customer discovered this when she took it for insurance appraisal. I sold her worthless costume jewelry for $22,000, and now she's threatening to sue me for fraud." Richard sank into his recliner, his face draining of color. "But that is impossible. Sophie, tell him about your ring. Michael bought it from a reputable jeweler." I took a deep breath, knowing this was the moment I had been waiting for. "Actually, Dad, I need to tell you something important about that ring." All eyes turned to me as I maintained my calm composure. 3 months ago, I had my ring appraised for insurance purposes. The jeweler mentioned how vulnerable expensive jewelry can be to theft, especially during times when people are incapacitated or hospitalized. He suggested I consider keeping a replica for daily wear while storing the original safely. Richard's eyes widened as understanding began to dawn. Natasha grabbed the back of a chair for support. I had an exact cubic zirconia replica made and began wearing it instead of my real ring. "The authentic ring has been in a bank safety deposit box for months." I paused, letting the revelation sink in completely. I suspected that during my surgery recovery, someone might be tempted to take advantage of my vulnerability. The silence in the room was deafening. Richard's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air while Natasha made a strangled sound of disbelief. "You deliberately set us up," Richard whispered, his voice filled with shock and growing rage. "You knew we would sell your ring, so you left us a fake." "I protected my most valuable possession because I know my family's character," I replied calmly. "I never told you to steal from me during my surgery. I never gave you permission to sell my ring. You made those choices entirely on your own." Natasha collapsed onto the couch, her face buried in her hands. "Oh my God, we are going to jail. Jeremy will leave me. Everyone will know we are thieves and frauds." Mr. Peterson's expression had shifted from anger to fascination as he watched the family drama unfold. "Miss Carter, are you saying you anticipated this theft and prepared accordingly?" "I hoped my family would respect my belongings during my medical crisis," I said carefully. "But I also took precautions to protect something irreplaceable, my late husband's final gift to me." Richard stood up abruptly, his face red with fury. "You manipulated us. You knew we needed money, and you deliberately left fake jewelry, knowing we might sell it." "I left my ring in my jewelry box in my room," I corrected firmly. "You stole it without permission while I was unconscious in a hospital bed. The fact that you stole something worthless instead of something valuable does not change the nature of your crime." Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "Regardless of the family dynamics, I still need $18,000 immediately. My customer is demanding refunds, and I have lawyers threatening lawsuits. This situation has severely damaged my business reputation." Richard turned desperate eyes toward me. "Sophie, you have to help us. Get your real ring and we can sell it to fix this mess." I smiled sweetly at my father. "My real ring is safely protected where thieves cannot reach it. You made your choices, Dad. Now you get to live with the consequences." Richard and Natasha sat in stunned silence as their world crumbled around them, finally understanding that their greed and cruelty had led them into a trap of their own making. The daughter they had underestimated and betrayed had outsmarted them completely, and now they faced criminal charges, financial ruin, and social humiliation for their failed attempt to profit from her medical crisis. Richard and Natasha faced immediate criminal fraud charges and civil lawsuits when Mr. Peterson filed police reports the following morning, leading to their arrests and a highly publicized court case that destroyed their reputations throughout Atlanta. Natasha lost her real estate license when her criminal conviction became public record, while Richard faced professional sanctions that ended his financial planning career and forced him to declare bankruptcy to pay legal fees and restitution. Their friends and neighbors completely shunned them when the full story emerged, leaving them isolated pariahs who had to sell Richard's house and move to a different city to escape the shame of being known as the family who stole from their daughter during her surgery recovery. Sophie returned to her successful career at Sterling Research Labs with a renewed appreciation for the importance of protecting herself from those who would exploit her kindness, keeping Michael's authentic ring safe in her possession, while building a future free from the toxic family members who had finally revealed their true character. As I admired the genuine diamond ring sparkling on my finger in my new apartment, I reflected on how this painful chapter had taught me that sometimes the greatest act of love is protecting what matters most from those who would destroy it, and that revenge served with patience and intelligence is far more satisfying than any angry confrontation could ever be.